G'day, my name is Glenn Jordan and I'm the co-founder of Empowa. Empowa is a platform to enable African communities to improve living conditions and create wealth, initially through the use of property. Why does Empowa exist? In Africa, there is a backlog of over 50 million homes. The immediate assumption for that backlog is because there is a lack of money. That's not the case. The reason for the backlog is structural. There is a lack of capital that is able to flow to the projects for a number of reasons. The first reason is risk. When we look at the risk, if we've got a choice between a shopping center in Berlin or a housing project in Nigeria, the cost of the housing project in Nigeria, the cost of capital for the housing project in Nigeria, immediately goes up. Why? Number of reasons. One, term. Obviously, the length of time that the capital is tied up in a risky African country is important. So property is not an attractive investment for capital in Africa particularly. There's a huge amount of money that's flowed into the continent for microlending. Why? Short-term, high margins, easy to make money out of. It's done. Last year alone, 2020, it was estimated that over $30 billion was extracted from microlending. So money can flow if it needs to or if there's desire. It's just not at the moment because of these reasons. So first one, term. Secondly, risk. The risk of country. So country risk, the political risk of any African country in the perception of the marketplace of the developed world adds to the cost of capital. Third element, project risk. Every project has a normal risk associated with it. Is it in the right area? Has it got the right attributes? All of those kinds of aspects to property, which are normal in a property project. But all of these push the price, the cost of capital through the roof if we're talking about an African project, particularly in affordable housing. So with the cost of capital so high, how do we reduce the cost of capital? How do we get capital to flow to the 50 million units that we have here? So we know that there's a demand for 50 million units. We know there's capital here. Our challenge is to get the money to flow down to that in order to implement projects and to get it to flow up. The cost of the capital is what makes this generally impossible. For example, the interest rates, the mortgage rate in Zimbabwe is at 45%. Now, nobody can afford a home at 45% in any economy. That's not possible. And that's not unique. The interest rates range from 20 to 30, right up to 45. So it's not unique that this becomes impossible if the cost of capital is so high. We will never meet this need. Empowa is a project that's designed to enable this to flow to here in a way that meets the needs of this market. Great. Sounds fantastic. Sounds impossible. How are we going to do it? Okay. We require three new technologies to enable us to do this. The first one, NFTs. Now, why do we need NFTs? We will use NFTs slightly differently to the way that they're being utilized now. And the reason for an NFT is to separate out. If we talk about an investment into a property, the first question is IRR. What's my IRR? What's my risk capital? That's the question. So we have to find a way of separating out the capital from the project. How do we do that? We're creating a whole bunch of different attributes to the project because this is about development. This is about impact. This is about making a difference. This is not just about making money. This is about what the world needs right now. And that's why the NFT, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail just now, requires different attributes rather than just an artistic value or rather than just the financial value. What we want to do is combine the two in making a unique instrument effectively that enables us to link this to this in a way that's separated out from just capital or interest or returns or anything like that. In order to do that, obviously, we need the blockchain. And that is why we have chosen Cardano as the base for the reasons that Cardano is the third generation, we like the academic rigor that's been associated with it. And of course, the African focus for us makes us part of that community and passionate part of that community. So we're really passionate about this technology and about the community that we're working in, because we really believe that together we can really start to address some of these issues. The third element that we're talking about here is actually not related to IT, but is related to circular building. Circular. Now, circular build. Why is that important? One of the challenges of getting money into this kind of project is property rights. 80% of sub-Saharan Africa struggles with property rights. Our initial attempt to look at this, we tried to look at how we solve the title deed issue. And we realized that it is so complex and so fraught with politics and political challenges that we weren't going to resolve this in the short term. So we thought, is there a way that we can solve this without having to address those long-term issues? And we realized that actually we can through circular building methodologies. So we're actually at this confluence of technology that enables us to come up with a solution. And the circular modular technology, building technology, which is now becoming the driving force, not just in Africa, but in the entire world, is to create environmentally positive building materials, because building and building materials and construction is a significant contributor to CO2 emissions and climate change. If we meet Africa's needs in the next 30 years, if we were to just meet their building needs right now, because Africa is a young continent, it is a growing continent, and it is urbanizing rapidly. It's urbanizing at an estimated 23 million people per annum. If we were just to meet the building needs in the traditional way, it's estimated that we would contribute more than 50% to the CO2 emissions. Now that's obviously impossible. The planet cannot afford that. So we can't do that. So we have to find a new way of doing it. Challenge: it tends to be more expensive than traditional building. So how do we resolve that? This mechanism, again, if we're cutting out the direct link between the value on this side and the value on this side, if we're slightly separating those two, we're able to address this issue in a very interesting way. So that in effect is Empowa. That in a nutshell is Empowa, and that is our objective in terms of what we're seeking to achieve. Previously, I described the challenges that we're addressing and what we're seeking to achieve, and that is to address the backlog of 50 million houses in an affordable way in Africa. So the question is, the challenge for us is, how do we actually do this? So the first question, how do we source money in such a way that it's not about what IRR, what's my IRR, what's my rate of return, what do I get in terms of this process? So how do we create value for people who have money without extracting value from people who don't have money? And this is one of the challenges in the world that we have today, because right now, when we talk about microlending as an example, microlending takes money from those who have and gives it to those who have not, admittedly, but unfortunately, it tends to be extractive because the interest rates are exorbitant. So how do we make it attractive to those who have money without being extractive from those who don't? And the way we're going to do that is by creating value for those who have money. And that's through an NFT. Now, the attributes of the NFT. We will be using an NFT slightly differently to the way it's been used historically, or to date rather than historically. We are going to use it to create attributes that are more than just art, that are more than just finance, but in fact it has a number of attributes. So we're looking at artistic value. So we are going to create NFTs that have artistic merit and artistic value. Our challenge and what we're seeking to do is to create links between well-known artists and unknown artists in Africa, because part of this process, part of this empowerment is the empowerment of artists. So when we talk about Empowa, I just want to address that now, is we're talking about empowering women, we're talking about empowering communities, we're talking about empowering artists, and we're talking about economic empowerment. And that's why we've named this project Empowa. So this part here enables us to link artists together, to create artistic merit, and to create NFTs that are of value, whether there is a financial return or not. The key part around this is, why would I buy an Empowa NFT? Because I care, because I want to make a difference, because I want my money to do something, because I want to make some contribution to the world. But it would be great if I could get my money back. It would be great if I could get a return. What kind of value can I create on that? So what we want to do is utilize this emerging market, this emerging technology of NFTs that are tradable, that create value, and say we want to add as much value to this NFT as we can to make it as valuable as possible, to create the biggest separation that we can between the money here and the impact here, so that we're not looking to extract value at this level. So if we are successful in creating that disconnect between that extraction of value, we've solved that conundrum that I mentioned in the beginning. So that's the first part around the process. Obviously now what we want to do is we want to link that NFT, that contribution, to a project. Now here on the ground we have a project, and in Project Catalyst we've put in for Project Zero a project called Introducing Empowa. And as part of that project, we are doing a project in Mozambique, in Beira in Mozambique. Now, our partner on the ground here is a company called Casa Real. And Casa Real is already an affordable house developer in Beira. Now, for those of you who know, Beira, Mozambique is one of the poorest countries in the world. Beira is one of the most climate-impacted cities in the world, because it has been hit with cyclones literally every year for the last couple of years, in fact, sometimes twice a year. So Beira is actually living climate change right now, and it's suffering through climate change. And one of the biggest impacts of that is the loss of housing, because the housing is not built to the quality and standards that are sustainable through this kind of climate change. So Casa Real is already proving that they can build affordable housing at a level that the market needs and wants. So Project Zero, what we're doing for Project Zero is we've said, can we introduce circular housing into this mix? If we can produce circular housing that is CO2 negative, we are not just having an impact at the housing level, but we're having an environmental impact as well. Now, the owners of that house and home, we will target women owners. So we've got women empowerment, we've got environmental impact, we've got financial impact, and we are obviously making a significant difference to a very poor country. Now, how we do that is the interest rates in Mozambique, the mortgage rates. For most people, first of all, there are 600 mortgages in a country of 30 million people. Now, that gives you an indication of the level of sophistication of the financial economy, and it also gives an indication of who would get those mortgages. It's not this market. So is there a way that now we can get money to flow down to here and then get it to flow back to the NFT? And that is the platform that we're utilizing. Initially, we'll be utilizing trusted partners like Casa Real, and this can be extended into any country, any region. Why? Because this is where the blockchain comes in. We're doing this without all the challenges of the normal financial system. And that's part of the key attraction for us, the incredible attraction of the decentralization, taking away this centralized management control processes, banking mechanisms that squeeze the margins and squeeze these poor buggers into out of their housing, out of their opportunities, out of their way of life, out of what should be happening for them. So what we want to do is find a mechanism that we can produce that, and we can get the money to flow in a way that gives return to the NFT, but without extracting the value from the person on the ground. And that is being done through, as I say, the partners. Effectively, the Empowa project has two tokens. We have a non-fungible token, which we've called an impact card. Now, the NFT is a mechanism to make funding attractive to those who have capital without being extractive from the projects. The NFT is a unique device to attract the funding and to have its own value. So it has an intrinsic value of its own through its artistic merit, through its impact scores, from the point of view of looking at women empowerment, financial empowerment, economic empowerment of communities, and climate contribution, because that's a key part of what we're looking at in terms of the building. So the NFT has an intrinsic value and is tradable and is liquid, which is a key element to the financial market of what we're seeking to achieve and how to make this funding attractive. The NFT, when purchased, and the NFT will be purchased utilizing both crypto and fiat currency, what will happen is that NFT will then be converted into EMPs, into EMP tokens. Those EMP tokens will then be distributed to the project. Those will then be utilized by the project partner to deliver the affordable house. And that affordable housing, that depends on the project. It can vary by country, it can vary by structure. That is very variable. And the part of that is obviously we're seeking to create multiple partners in multiple countries in able to deliver multiple units for people, because we have to address this at scale. If we're not enabling this solution at scale, we're not doing our job. There is no ways we can address a 50 million backlog by addressing one or two homes at a time. We have to enable the energy of the community. We have to empower the community to develop solutions themselves and to create solutions, and we just have to be the platform to enable that. And that is therefore the EMP token. That's utilized then in terms of the flow to the project partner, who then we're doing a lease to own. So the infrastructure here is that there is a token flow back, and that ends up going back to the NFT. So the NFT attributes value over time through just EMPs. So it is actually collecting a financial value over time through the collection of EMPs, which are done through the lease to own. This is the mechanism by which we are creating the value flow. It's also the mechanism by which we overcome the challenges of all the varying currencies, all the infrastructure, as we know, the crypto space, what it can achieve in terms of flexibility and reduced cost. So that is what the EMP token is for, and it's about. So it is the ecosystem around which the affordable housing is both developed and the returns are flowing back to the NFT. So the non-fungible token effectively earns EMP tokens. Now, in terms of our tokenomics, we've structured the tokenomics in such a way that there is a total of 100 million EMP tokens that will be issued. So the NFTs will buy those EMP tokens through fiat at the prevailing market rate. 80 million of those have been allocated to projects. Now, our objective, obviously, 80 million is a relatively small portfolio of property. We know that we can scale this to significance. In order to do that, we've allocated 15 million to the development of the platform. Right now, this is a challenge. We don't know the scope, the complexity. We're not really at that stage yet. There is a lot of work to be done in terms of defining that, creating that solution. But we think that should be more than enough. And we have left a 5 million pool in case that's not enough, or in case we want to add that to the project. That's the basis on which the EMP tokens are allocated. That's the tokenomics. The flow is always done through the purchase at the prevailing market rate. So when we are going to be issuing the first tokens for the launch, for the development of the platform, it will be done, we're doing those on a one-to-one with ADA, and then the rest will be purchased at market rate. So there's an ongoing purchase flow as we produce the NFTs and sell and market those to people who are looking to contribute to make an impact, to empower people on the ground, to empower communities in Africa. I've mentioned that we have the need for affordable housing, and we need to get the money flow from those who have money to those who don't in a way that is attractive for a contribution, but not extractive for the recipient. The only way we're going to be able to do that is through decentralization. The current system doesn't work. We know that. Because how do we know that? Because we have a backlog of 50 million homes. It's simple. It's not working. We have to change it. How do we change it? We have to utilize new technologies to change it. And the decentralization, the blockchain, and in our opinion, Cardano, because of what it seeks to achieve, the academic rigor, and the interest in Africa, for us, it's a magic fit. Because our objective is to ensure that we can trace and track the flow of funds as well as the impact back to the contributor in such a way that it becomes attractive for the contributor. So we've spoken about creating value at the NFT level. We've spoken about the levels of value that we create, that we're looking at creating a link between the contribution and the person and the project and person, people. There are people at the end of this. That's why we're talking about Empowa. Every time we talk about a home, we're talking about a person, a family, a contribution, a life. And that's the part that we want to emphasize, because that's the part that gets lost often in the statistics. That when we talk about 1 billion people in Africa, almost 1 billion people don't have a roof, permanent roof over their head. We get blinded by the numbers. It doesn't mean anything until it becomes personal. And that's our objective. We want to be able to link contribution to the personal stories on the ground, the feedback for the funding in such a way that it's traced and tracked. And the blockchain is the ideal mechanism to do that. The whole objective here is to create those stories, to make these empower the people on the ground in such a way that it is rewarding for the people who are contributing. Now, obviously, we need to be sensitive around that and what that exactly means and how that's structured. That's part of the project that we'll be working on going forward. But it's key to this constant creation of value here, whereby we're being attractive but not extractive. That's a key part around it. The other part around the decentralization is the flow of money. Now, for those of you who have experienced it in Africa, remittances can cost anything between 5 and 25% to send money home. Now, that gives an indication of the blockages in the traditional monetary system. That gives us an indication of the cost of all the steps in the way. We have to find a way of decentralizing that, of making that more efficient and more effective. And we know that the blockchain is the most efficient and effective way of getting the funding to where it's most needed and to get the return to flow back. It's the most efficient, it's the most effective, and it's the most cost-effective way that we can do that. Because every step that we remove from the process, from the monetary flow, the centralization, every step that we can remove from that, the more cost-effective it becomes on the ground for the individual, so that when we're not extracting value. Because if a mortgage rate is 45% and we can enable money to flow at 5%, what does that do what impact does that have on the ground? We have no idea. If you speak to anybody who's involved in affordable housing in Africa, they will tell you that there is an almost unlimited market at the right price, at the right cost of money. When we can provide that, we believe that we can open up a significant market here. Just to give you a sense of that, the backlog is 50 million homes. If we could do 100,000 a year, which is a big project, because the CAF reports that, in fact, there are very few developers in Africa who can produce more than 500 in a year. So that if we could, that's in sub-Saharan Africa, if we could produce 100,000 homes, if we could support the development of 100,000 homes, it would only take us 500 years to address the backlog. Now, if we can't understand that there's a demand here, and that if with the right price, the right product, the right quality of product at the right price, that there must be a demand at that level, we know that we can be pressing the incredible buttons. As I say to the team, the Empowa team, I keep saying, if not us, who? Who's going to do this? Who's going to make this difference? We can't expect traditional funders and the traditional funding institutions, the traditional financial institutions to do this. We can't expect that. We have to find ways of change. We have to make that change. We have to be that change. We have to empower people to be that change. We want to empower everybody to be able to deliver this, to be able to experience this, and to be able to be part of this, because this requires fundamental change. This requires Empowa.